Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us on this Friday night. I'm Jay Cohn.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. City and county officials, law enforcement and local health experts create a united front to prepare our community for major flooding over the next few days.
Yellowstone County Disaster and Emergency Services warning that local rivers and streams will turn extremely dangerous, and they're urging everyone to stay away from the water. Now, this flooding this weekend will likely impact property and livestock and could close roads and bridges and shut down power, water, and sewer systems.
Area residents also warned to monitor irrigation ditches and other water systems for breaches or failures. Q2 Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire busy monitoring the situation from the Weather Center today. Bob, within all of these warnings, there's a small bit of good news.
Yeah, a little bit of good news. It looks like the storm that's coming our way is going to take a little bit southerly track, just a little bit. Here it is right here coming offshore. You can see it there in California, and it'll continue to make its way to the Great Basin area, slinging moisture all the way up into Saturday night and gets the showers going then. Then you'll notice not as much farther north on Sunday, and then the whole thing tracks out of the way. So here's what's going to happen for us. As far as precipitation, we're going to wind up with maybe instead of 1 1/4 inches of precipitation, for Billings it's going to be about maybe 7/10 of an inch, and a little less over at Bozeman and places like Livingston. So here's your holiday forecast. Here's what we see here tonight. 86 degrees on Saturday, 73 on Sunday, 72 on Monday, and all with like a 50 to 70% chance for heavy showers moving in on Sunday and again on Monday. Let's go back to Jay and Jeanelle.
All right, thanks, Bob.
As you can see, this changing forecast will have a big impact on this holiday weekend.
For more specific details on the flood outlook, we now go to Q2 meteorologist Connor Pregetzer. Connor.
Well, thank you, Jay and Jeanelle. And yes, the changes to the forecast have had a rather drastic impact on our flood outlook as well. Less water in the river basins means less water in the rivers themselves. This is the same graphic I was standing in front of yesterday, which is the flood outlook for the Yellowstone River here in Billings. But we notice this peak is at 15.1 feet. That's almost 1.5 feet less than the forecasted peak at this time yesterday, which again is a little bit of good news. The Clark's Fork at Edgar looks very similar. This peak here at 10.4 feet is less than the peak we were forecasting yesterday and below major flood stage there as well. Now, that's not to say this event is still not forecasted to be severe, because it is, and now is absolutely the time to start preparing for this. So if you do live in a flood-prone area, this is a map that shows a lot of the areas. We've got obviously right along the river in those low-lying areas, as well as some of the creeks, 5 Mile Creek, Alkali Creek, Canyon Creek, and Blue Creek down there as well. So if you do live in these areas, now's the time to start preparing. And for a bit of a more in-depth look, go to Yellowstone County website and look at their interactive mapping section. For now, we go back to Jay and Jeanelle.
All right, thanks, Connor.
Those who live and work along the river are already taking steps to protect people and property this holiday weekend.
Q2 Samantha Harrelson caught up with the folks at River Ridge Landscaping near Laurel, who are preparing for the worst.
When they were predicting just around 13 feet, we can usually defend that. So we're just building sandbags and just trying to keep the water out of the bottom here the best we could. If it was only going to get that high, we can do that pretty easy. You see the water is up on the sandbags right through here already.
The property, which includes their business and their home, sits right where the Clark's Fork River meets the Yellowstone.
But this is the Clark's Fork right here. It's coming through the trees up here, you know, cutting the corner.
At first, the focus was to protect this low-lying field from the rising waters. But with the new projection of 3 or 4 more feet, the water could travel up this berm and be at their back door.
Obviously, we moved out here and we knew that this could happen. As far as water down below here, but we didn't think it would ever get up towards the house because the house is quite high here. We're still filling sandbags in case we still need them, but we're moving past the sandbag phase. We're actually bringing in truckloads of road material. I've had about 10 truckloads delivered, and that's what we're going to make this dike out of.
Steve says they will likely spend much of the holiday weekend preparing for the potential flooding. And while they are understandably concerned, he says at least it's just land.
We got flood insurance. Ever since we've been here, we've had it. Thank goodness. So if something bad happens, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, we're going to lose maybe some things, but nothing terrible is going to happen. I don't think we're going to lose any lives, nothing like that. We're just going to be a little bit displaced and uncomfortable. So we're going to prepare like it's going to happen, and hopefully it doesn't, but that's what we're going to do.
Samantha Harrelson, MTN News.
Thanks, Sammy. Now, if you experience flooding on your property, make sure to unplug appliances to prevent electrical shock when the power comes back on, and turn off gas, power, and water before you evacuate. Good
advice there. Local authorities making free sandbags available this evening after 8 o'clock tonight. Now, you can pick them up at Huntley, Warden, and the Blue Creek fire stations, also at the Laurel Soccer Field and Amen Park here in Billings.
50,000 sandbags will be available tonight and 25,000 more tomorrow. Now, sand will also be provided. However, residents need to fill the bags themselves. A Powell, Wyoming man will spend up to 20 years in prison for killing his wife. 64-year-old David Williamson sentenced Thursday in Park County District Court to 18 to 20 years. Williamson claimed he shot his wife Shirley in the head last August to end her mental illness. Now, he said his wife was hearing voices and having a mental breakdown, but the victim had warned her son if she were to die, Williamson was to blame.
Well, today marks 1 week after a teenager went on a shooting rampage at a high school in Texas, killing 10 people.
Q2's Zoe Zandora checked in with Billings Public Schools to find out how District 2 responded to yet another school shooting. Zoe.
That's right, Jay and Jeanelle. Superintendent Terry Bauk says in his newsletter to parents that he is at a loss for words to explain the recent school shooting in the country. Bauk wrote, "Our hearts are heavy as we now come to terms with what appears to be the new norm," and then goes on to explain that unfortunately this has caused for the need of increased security. The district's new executive director of emergency preparedness, Mark Wall, spoke with us about what changes are being made.
We have, IDs for staff, students, and guests. We have locked doors. We have an entrance protocol. We recently purchased an emergency communication system, which we're now drilling. I think it's going to be a very effective system at allowing us to communicate. And if a big disaster or something does come up, I think we'll be able to communicate. We have an emergency preparedness committee in place, and that committee will meet 4 times a year to discuss best practices, discuss the latest technologies. There's a lot to prepare for. What we want to feel good about is that we're diligent, that we're thinking about being prepared, and that if something comes up that we are as prepared as we possibly could be.
And this weekend is graduation, and there is enhanced security that's been put into place. You can't bring in large backpacks, purses, bags, all not allowed into the Rimrock Auto Arena.
Is that the whole list right there?
Actually, no, the list is actually quite long. There's no exceptions, so you can go online to ktvq.com for that full list.
All right, thanks, Zoe.
Thanks, Zoe. Coming up on tonight's 5:30 News, Montana's governor deployed bear spray on the Capitol lawn today. Find out why.
And coming up in sports tonight, it's a jam-packed Friday. Scott will update us on state track, tennis, and softball underway.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Jeanelle Slade. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.